Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our council meeting. And I'm going to begin by inviting Councillor Rob Uhrig to read our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis people and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters.
Thank you, Councillor. And now I'll just invite you to join me in a moment of silent reflection on today's business. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, I just remind you that you can bring that information forward if it occurs to you. Now, announcements, and I'm going to turn the mic over to CAO Rob Armstrong.
Thank you, Worship. One small announcement today from staff. We have with us today Samantha Barker, who is our new accounts payable and purchasing coordinator. I know you've had a chance to meet her, Mr. Mayor, because you're the one that signs the checks, and she is now coordinating that. But Samantha, over this side. Okay, Samantha's right.
Welcome. Are there any other announcements today? Deputy Mayor Keaveney.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and good afternoon, everyone. We have a very special event in Meaford coming up on the civic holiday weekend, the 5th of August. It begins at 7 a.m. with a community-wide yard sale. And dog lovers, the dog parade begins at 9:30. From 10 until 4, there will be a huge sidewalk sale downtown. Everyone will remember Summerfest last year, and I think there's going to be, if the rumor is true, I think about double the vendors from last year. And you remember on Canada Day that the air show had to be canceled. Well, the air show is coming back and happening at 12:45 at the harbor with 81-year-old pilot Gord Price. So this is not to be missed. For Jeep enthusiasts, there's a full day of off-road fun with the Jeep Show and Shine and an obstacle course at the harbor. There will be a brand new addition to the festival this year, a car show featuring sports cars, motorcycles, and adventure vehicles. At 10:30, the cars will start arriving. Don't miss the live street door painting called Doors of Meaford. That goes on between 10 and 4, and that was really fun to watch last year. And there'll be more doors painted this year than last. And last but certainly not least is the poutine off, with almost all of our restaurants participating this year. And I know there'll be everything from beef and salami to chicken and pork, and I think there might even be a vegan poutine. So again, that's a Summerfest happening on August the 5th, and I just want to extend my sincere gratitude to Grace Moran and Jess Kenyon for putting together this event. It's absolutely fantastic that what these two have pulled together for us, and I know they've been working with staff, and it's just going to be a great day. So everybody downtown on August the 5th, thank you.
I remember I was a judge in the poutine off, and that was a really great job. Believe me, I sign up again. Any other announcements? Oh, sorry, Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. That's a pretty hard act to follow, Deputy Mayor. I do have a couple, if I may. Starting, and again, this is civic holiday weekend, the Electric Eclectics, an event that has been going for almost 20 years in our municipality. It kicks off Friday, August 4th at 8 p.m. and goes until 3 p.m. on Sunday, August the 6th. And all I can tell you is check out their website for ticket information. And there is another special event coming up. This is Saturday, August the 12th. So it's a few days away. Once again, out at the very historic Leith Church, Saturday, August 12th, 7:30. There is going to be a Payadora Tango Ensemble. So there. And this is a tango, not a tango. They will be entertaining with Argentine tango and folk music. Sounds like a great show. Unfortunately, I think the only place you can pick up tickets is from the Roxy Theater in the small municipality to the west of us. But sounds like a great night out in Lee. Thank you.
Councillor Euring.
Thank you. And if it was me, it would be a tango, not a tango, but that's good. I'd be also ahead of the curve. I wanted to mention that MIF is coming back again this year. We're glad post-COVID we're able to be back in the big tent beside Meaford Hall. So you'll see that going up the weekend before the Labor Day weekend. So I just wanted to mention the tickets are available now. It'll be August 31st to September 3rd with the dinners, and we've got a great lineup of shows this year. And that's a major fundraiser for the Meaford Culture Foundation, which enables them to help refurbishments for the Meaford Hall, as well as support lots of arts and cultural initiatives in the community. Thank you.
And are there any more announcements? Okay, thank you. Public participation. Members of the public are encouraged to provide council with their comments and questions. Presentations must be prearranged with legislative services before the agenda is released and will be limited to 10 minutes. If a member of the public wishes to make a deputation on items on the council agenda or to ask a public question, they may do so either in person at the council chambers or remotely via Zoom, phone, or internet. Members of the public wishing to make a deputation or ask a public question must register in advance with legislative services by 10 a.m. on the day of by contacting the deputy clerk at meaford.ca. The number is 519-538-1060, extension 1100. An email with access information will be sent to those who register for remote participation. Deputations are limited to 5 minutes and public questions are limited to 2 minutes. And the public can watch this meeting via the Municipality of Meaford's YouTube channel, www.meaford.ca/YouTube. And in terms of presentations today, we have 3, I believe, or 4. And the first one is going to be virtual. So I'm going to ask if Sarah Durr and Jackie Ralph from the 9th annual Ride Don't Hide event are tuned in. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
You want to go ahead?
Yes. Jackie, are you here?
And I'm here as well. Thank you so much.
Hi, Jackie.
Hello, Ross.
Go ahead.
So good afternoon. My name is Sarah Durr, and I'm here today on behalf of the Canadian Mental Health Association, Grey Bruce. I have different roles within the organization, but today I'm here as the coordinator for our annual Ride Don't Hide community event. This year, the event will be hosted on Sunday, September 17th. Jackie, would you like to introduce yourself?
That's right. And I'm Jackie. I've worked at Canadian Mental Health Association for 19 years now. And I too have judged some things with the Honorable Mr. Kinder. And I always love any opportunity we have to come and speak to the council. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So next slide, please. So this year we have moved our event from the west side of Owen Sound to the east side. And so we're excited to have our cycling routes for the first time in the municipality of Meaford. Next slide, please. So just a bit about the Ride Don't Hide event. So Ride Don't Hide began in 2010. As Michael Schrader, a Vancouver teacher and newspaper columnist, embarked on a global journey to raise funds for the Canadian Mental Health Association British Columbia division and raise awareness about the stigma surrounding mental illness. So he cycled around the world, cycling 40,000 kilometers across 6 continents and 33 countries, inviting the people he met along the way to help end mental illness stigma. Now the Ride Don't Hide, since it started in 2010, has raised more than $10 million for local mental health programs and services and has become the largest cycling event of its kind in Canada. Next slide, please. So yes, the ride takes place in more than 25 communities across 8 provinces with close to 10,000 participants each year. And it's been in the Grey Bruce area for 9 years. Next slide, please. Yes, so to date, Ride Don't Hide Grey Bruce has fundraised $450,000 for local mental health initiatives. And after this year's ride, we plan to have raised $500,000 for local mental health initiatives. Next slide, please. So we have seen anywhere from 110 to over 350 riders. And this year we hope to once again welcome 300 riders to our event. Next slide, please. So this is the schedule for the day. This year we'll be hosting the Ride Don't Hide at the Owen Sound Kiwanis Soccer Complex, which has been generally donated to be used by the Owen Sound Soccer Association. So the first group of cyclists will depart from the complex at 8 a.m. And then you can see we have spaced out the departure between the different routes. And this is just to ensure rider safety and that cyclists are spaced out well on the roads and that all participants return to the complex at approximately the same time. Next slide, please. So yes, we have routes for all riding levels. So we have the 80-kilometer route, the 40-kilometer route, 20-kilometer route, and a 13-kilometer route. We also have a 5-kilometer family-friendly route, which is you don't have a bike, you can walk along the trail system to the Bayshore Community Center. For registration, we have the super early bird registration right now for $50, and that is until July 31st. And then after July 31st and until the end of August, we have the $60 early bird registration. And after August, the last day in August until the event in September, it will be a $70 registration fee. So participants who register will receive lunch, some swag, and an official Ride Don't Hide 2023 t-shirt. We also have a registration option as a virtual rider. So this is where you can register for free and help raise funds. Next slide, please. And here are the routes that we have for this year's event. So all cycling routes will start and finish at the Owen Sound Kiwanis Soccer Complex. To start, all cycling routes will follow East Bayshore Road north into Leith and travel through and around the villages of Leith and Annan. The 20-kilometer, 40-kilometer, and 80-kilometer routes will be riding past the historic Leith Church. Every route will also have a rest station just for rider safety, so they can break, have some water, and to check in with our route marshals. Also, if a rider kind of gets on their way, maybe they're part of the 40-kilometer route and they're deciding like, this is too much, they can switch tracks to the 20-kilometer route, as this event is a ride, not a race. So then we also have the 5-kilometer walking route that follows the CP Rail Trail towards the Bayshore Community Center. Next slide, please. Yes, so as I've said, this is a community event. It is geared for people of all ages and abilities. It is a ride, not race event. Our mission is to raise mental health awareness and to celebrate the participation of our community in raising critically needed funds for local mental health programs. Next slide, please. And here are some of our sponsors to date for our 2023 event. Next slide, please. Yes, so our ultimate goal is to ensure that every participant that leaves the complex returns to the complex. Safety is our #1 priority. So we have created an operational safety plan detailing execution of safety measures that will be taken on the day of the event. Next slide, please. So this safety plan has been approved by the local OPP detachment, and some of the safety measures that will be taken are that we will have St. John ambulance on site that day. We will have a paid on-duty Owen Sound city police officer who will be on site to assist cyclists with safe entry onto the route. We will have designated volunteer mobile route ambassadors who will be assigned in clearly marked ride don't hide trucks to assist with equipment repairs, first aid, and transport for participants who choose not to complete their route to help return cyclists safely back to site. And they'll also ensure that our rest stations are fully stocked with water and all essential items. All routes will also be assigned a sweeper to ride at the rear of the peloton to help ensure participants complete the route safely. And route marshals will be staged throughout the route at several different rest stop locations to ensure all riders follow the rules of the event, including all laws under the Highway Traffic Act. Next slide, please. So in the event of a weather watch for the area, the event will be canceled. And this year, one additional weather advisory that we may need to consider is the air quality for the day. Next slide, please. So yes, the main purpose of me speaking to you today is to respectfully request the following support. So we know that an event is only as successful as the partners involved. So today I'm asking that we can have the cross promotion through our social media, that we receive support from municipal staff for safety planning, have attendance on the day of to give greetings, and some municipality of Meaford swag and information to hand out to promote Meaford to our out of town participants. Next slide, please. So yes, that's all I have for you today. And thank you for listening. Yeah, and for your time.
Are there any questions from council? I'm hoping that Bayshore Road won't be under construction if you're on that. Is that a possibility? It is a possibility. Are you guys aware that there is going to be a major construction project on Bayshore Road?
Yeah, so we've
Beginning
been
of September?
yes, we've been in correspondence with the staff. Just to, we knew there was a tender that had gone out, and that might be a real possibility. So if that happens, we will have to adjust the routes accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next presenter is Simona Freibergova, who's going to be speaking on Don't Be Square, Be Circle.
Thank you. Okay, one more time. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council. I came today to speak on behalf of Transition Meaford about recycling program, and also to let you know what we learn about circular economy. At the beginning of this year, sorry, I'm using this as well. Not sure. Okay, perfect. So circular economy. At the beginning of this year, some of our members have attended adult learning program on circular economy in Collingwood. Circular economy favors activities that preserves values in the form of energy, labor, and materials. This means designing for durability, reuse, remanufacturing, and recycling to keep products, components, and materials circling in the community. A circular economy entails markets that gives intensive to reusing products rather than scraping them from scraping them and then extracting them new resources. In such economy, all forms of waste, such as clothes, scrap metal, and obsolete electronics, are returned to the economy or used more efficiently. Circular economy for reusing material in this world, we extract from the earth, and more we use the raw resources, we create the new economy, future jobs in our society, and we can also keep this regional. The reason why I'm talking about it today, so this is where it came from, the Council of Canadian Academies. This is a statistic in the world and in Canada. I don't need to read all the details at the percentage, but the whole idea is to help to significantly use the resources that we can sustain and put them back in the circular economy. So here is the picture of linear versus circular. So instead of making, using, and wasting, we'd like to reuse, repair, recycle, and remanufacture. This is how the circular economy works in Canada. We are currently at the 6.1% that we use these materials. We could basically, in Canada is one of the higher rate for circularity. We could increase our circularity rates because we are quite low compared to other countries. So Transition Meaford look into an option, as you may be aware of, approximately 10 to 12 years ago, Transition Meaford, leading by Thomas Dean, spearheaded pilot project allowing Meaford residents and businesses to bring their film plastic to a drop-off point for a pickup by Switch Energy Corp. The drop-off point was also at the 87 Stewart Street, which is we currently use for styrofoam and e-waste. At the time, there was no charge for a pickup. Switch Energy Corporation is still in the business of collecting and recycling film plastic, including collection of agriculture bale wrap from the local farms. The success of this project led to curbside pickup of the film plastic by Miller Waste. Citing the cost associated with curbside pickup, this was canceled by the municipality a few years back due to the cost. Today, we are talking about the same company, Switch Energy. Switch Energy, we currently contacted them again based on inquiries by our residents. What can we do with the film plastic, especially by the farmers that they are using bale wraps? And we connected with the Switch Energy Corporation and asked them what could we do to bring it back to our residents. For those who don't know, Switch Energy Corporation is currently servicing southwestern Ontario and has over a decade of experience with collection of agriculture waste and design and development of plastic washing and mechanical shredding. They sell this repurposed plastic further to other companies for other products. We've spoken with the Knott, the CEO of Switch Energy, who presented to us a simple recycling process that they offer. They would deliver a roll of 15 bags, 45-gallon size, that they will pick up and then return full of our collected and sorted plastic as per their requirements. The cost for the service is $90. So simply put, 15 bags for $90. Question is how many bags we can collect in a certain time and what would be the cost. Considering we currently have our recycling depot set up with styrofoam and now with e-waste at 87 Stewart Street, we would like to propose to reintroduce this additional film plastic recycling program to our residents at this location. Since May 2023, a few months back, e-waste has returned to 87 Stewart Street, and technically e-waste recycling income can offset some of the other recycling costs. Forgot myself here. So this is the solution that we are thinking to divert film plastic from the landfill in quotation, in brackets again. This is nothing new for Meaford. We are talking about polyethylene. That's the material that we would be collecting. Polyethylene is the most widely used plastic in the world, being made into products ranging from clear food wrap and shopping bags to detergent bottles and automobile fuel tanks. Excuse me. So when you look at this slide, you will see what we are proposing. We currently have a styrofoam recycling at the 87 Stewart Street, and we also have an e-waste. The styrofoam has been successful since October 2021, and currently it's been operating by the municipality staff successfully. At the time that Transition Meaford was involved, we measured that 200 cubic yards were collected annually and diverted from the landfill and repurposed into another products like crown molding, picture frames, even furniture. As I mentioned, the e-waste started again at this location in the spring in 2023. So we have currently 2 containers at that location. I'm not sure how much we currently collect. But the third one is the film plastic that we are proposing to bring in and offer to our residents to start in September of this year, ideally. And there is the note that has been previously done before. So now the question is, how are we going to fund this? I would like to ask, I think the next slide is what we need. We would like to respectfully request bursary grant funding to initiate this pilot project. It is absolutely our understanding that the bursary program has been completed a few months back, but I was wondering if there would be some funding left that we could apply for it. We also would like to ask I'm going to jump to a grant, the number 3. We would like to propose that municipal staff will support us to apply for a grant. We have Transition Meaford members did a quick research of possible grant funding, and we find out that Canadian Federation of Municipalities Green Municipal Fund, there is a funding opportunity on their website called Pilot Project, which aligns very well with our film plastic initiative. There might be some synergies with diversion that municipality of Meaford is already doing with the e-waste. And Transition Meaford would like to ask for assistance from the staff and create an inventory list of any successful or unsuccessful funding application that have been done on waste management within the last 10 years. This conversation started in October or September 2021 when we talk about styrofoam. And one of our questions is whether municipality of Meaford is actively seeking grant funding or identifying grant opportunities that would largely fund these new initiatives. The maximum award that I'm talking about possible grant is $500,000 to cover up to 50% of the eligible costs. Municipalities and municipal partners with a population of 20,000 or under may qualify for a grant up to 80% of eligible project costs. It's open to all Canadian municipal governments, municipal partners applying in partnership with the municipal government. And the expected output is a pilot project that addresses a particular types of polystyrene gypsum plastic, improves its waste stream diversion rate by weight or volume, and offers other environmental benefits.
think your time is just about up.
It is up. The last thing that I would like to add is that we've been in touch with the Oxford County. Oxford County is our example that actually they've been doing it since 2020, and they've been exceptional support to lead us to a municipal thermoplastic program that they've been doing, offering their residents. So we've been talking to Cephas Pancho, the economic developer in Tilsonburg. He's the executive. He works on the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and he's been talking about this program previously. So we are learning about their program, how they are doing it, so we can learn from them about their best practices to be able to offer it to Meaford residents. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Are there any council questions? Steve? Councilor.
Thank you, Mayor Kettner. Thanks for your presentation. Presently, the municipality of Meaford diversion rate is about double the Ontario average. So if we could add to that, that would be great. Now, you mentioned they will pick up how many bags for $90? 15 bags?
That's right.
How big are these bags?
45-gallon bags.
Okay, so I may have missed it, but later on in your talk, you said you were seeking $500,000 worth of.
That's a grant. It's up to 500,000.
Oh, okay, that's what's available.
That's available with the help of municipality staff. We could apply for a grant that would cover any expenses, including styrofoam or including the film plastic.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Simona, for your presentation and for all of the work that you are leading through Transition Meaford in this regard. Certainly, ever since we ceased collecting film plastic a number of years ago, people have still been inquiring, you know, why can't we continue to do that? So I appreciate the work you're doing. Two questions for you, if I may, and Councillor Bartley alluded to the grant, but do you have a sense of how much funding you might need to get this pilot underway?
Well, the reason why I asked for the bursary program is because in order to start in September, we would need at least some to cover the cost. But this would obviously be a few months before we will be approved. So my vision to get it started, I always feel that once you start, you find the rest later. But I feel that if we apply whatever the cost is, the styrofoam, my understanding is the styrofoam is currently around $4,000 or $5,000 a year cost, plus the film plastic recycling. Not knowing the volume at this moment, that's why we want to call it 1 year pilot project. I would assume we'll start with the 15 bags a month. If that would increase, that would be probably higher. So to be on a higher end, I would say $90 would be probably the first month, and then we would increase it based on the drop of volume, which is very difficult for me to estimate at this moment, but I would assume it would increase every month as the styrofoam did. So I can provide you with calculation and probably budget to sum it up. My estimate would be 10,000-15,000.
Thank you. And the second question, if I may, Your Worship. Simona, thinking back to when the styrofoam got underway and volunteers from Transition Meaford manned the station on Saturdays, were you thinking of providing volunteers to get this started as well?
Yes, we were thinking to start it, but also if the grant would be successful, we would like to actually create employment opportunity from that and include it in the grant writing. You're welcome.
Councillor Uhrig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Simona. Great presentation. I agree 100%. It would be great to try and improve anything we can do in the recycling aspects. That's brilliant. My question, I guess, is it's a shame Jessica isn't here today because we're going through this motion of obviously switching providers. It's going to be a couple of years to get into that, and be interesting to know what that's going to cover. Looking at the Oxford example, presuming film is not part of that, I don't know if they're going to be in the same program we are. Having been down at Stewart Street a couple of Saturday mornings, both that is working incredibly well, and it's nice to see that people are taking advantage of those initiatives. Have you spoken with anybody staff yet about the possibility of using that facility? This is your first overture with council first, or have you actually spoken to Jessica about potential of using Stewart Street for this initiative?
Not from the film plastic, because we would need the funding first and getting approval from the council. So I have not approached Jessica or anybody from the waste department about this yet.
Yeah, I would recommend you do that only because, and again, aside from council's directive today or support, but I know she's also a big proponent of anything we can do to kind of improve recycling. So I think it would be good to have a conversation as well with her, because I think working together, yeah, we can hopefully try and find some ways to kind of make this happen.
Thank you. Well, would anyone here know whether any funding has been ever applied to for waste?
I'm going to call on CEO Armstrong just in a moment here because I'm sure you have some information that may be helpful. And there was other council questions, but if you'd like to speak now, go ahead.
As far as the municipality goes, the only funding we receive is through the Waste Diversion Ontario and our normal return on stuff that comes back based on our diversion rate and recycling amounts. That's all we receive. And we know that there's a big transition going on with regard to recycling, which was alluded to by Councillor Uhrig. And things will be changing for us significantly in the recycle world as we transition over the next couple of years, starting this year. So but that's the only funding we've ever secured that I'm aware of.
And we've never applied for any of the grants that may be available.
Not that I'm aware.
We haven't applied for the FCM grant that Simone is talking about. We have applied for various other things over the years around energy management and so on. I think we have looked at these FCM grants before, and again, Jess would be the best person to talk to this, but sometimes the technical bits of the grants mean that it hasn't made sense for us in that moment because of the service levels that we've wanted to do. So for instance, I'm having a very, very rapid read of it right now. And it, it's talking about pilot projects. So it might pay for a year's worth of something, and then we would have to cover the costs of it. Or it talks about capital costs. And obviously this sort of thing isn't necessarily a capital cost. So especially, unfortunately, for the amounts that we're talking about here, I think we might fall into a bit of a hole here, which is that this type of thing isn't necessarily what they're looking to fund, because it isn't a dramatic increase in anything, but yet it's not a capital item as well. We absolutely could with council direction, but we also haven't had the request to sort of look at these different service standards for waste.
Could I ask, sorry, Tori, you go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add, as well, as I was a part of the creation of the styrofoam pilot project. At the time, we looked into various grants to assist with funding of staffing. However, some of the grants looked at were not for municipal programs, and other ones we were already utilizing for other full-time positions. And so there was no availability to apply for it again. And so we did at that point look at grants that were available to assist with that program, but there just wasn't something at the time.
So could I just ask Mr. Armstrong, where would their organization fit in our bursary program? Like, I think our bursaries have been accounted for this year, or even perhaps on the longer term.
Yeah, first off, I don't know if it's because our bursary program is community well-being, and the first check would be to see if this is community well-being. I don't know if it's sort of another initiative might be outside that, and I'm not too sure of the status of the funding overall in that program.
So the deadline obviously passed and council had their special meetings a couple of months ago. If you remember, council actually allocated additional funds beyond what was in the budget for the next 4 years. So we're technically, I think, $5,000 over budget on that particular program. I don't think that my recommendation would have been that this fitted into it, because I think if we're doing something to use municipal facilities and involving municipal staff, I think that's just a service level that council sets. And so, you know, if the maximum grant for anybody was $4,000, I believe, for this term of council. So if this is something council wants to do, then I would just suggest you give us direction to put some money in the budget to be able to expand the waste diversion program. Not having seen the figures that Simona's talked about, you know, I think when we took film plastics off a couple of years ago, it was because the cost through Miller was dramatically higher. And so that was a way of trying to create some savings because they were having trouble getting anybody to take it. My memory of that is that over the 5 years we did do film plastic, we only managed to get 2 bales in the entire period, and that's obviously with people putting it into their blue bins as well. So I suspect we would see quite a lot less if people had to physically take it to a location. So we just have to look at what the numbers were now, because it sounds like the pricing is very different to what Millers were talking about, but we need some direction on expanding that service.
I think you had a question, Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Simona, for your presentation. It's a wonderful concept. I guess when I first read your presentation, I did have a difficulty, and I still do, using the county of Oxford as your benchmark. Our municipality has a little over 11,000 population, so there's quite a difference between a lower tier municipality and a county. It's a great idea. When it comes to grants, I've always been very frustrated that a nation such as Canada, that is so involved in the climate change battle and so involved in protecting our resources, has such, between the nation and the province, have such little funding for projects like this. To me, these are the type of things that they should be taking leadership and giving us the opportunity to follow that leadership. So the best I can tell you is we appreciate you coming today. We'll be starting our budget talks likely in a couple of months, so we'll have to see what evolves then. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and hi, Simona. Thank you very much for your presentation today. Just maybe you can comment on, so these were recycled materials. How will they be used and marketed after the recycling process? And does this present opportunity to bring additional revenue to the project itself?
I believe that similar to the styrofoam, the film plastic would not create a revenue for like a e-waste. As an example, it would be more like the styrofoam. But I believe that the first part of the question, could you repeat it?
Thank you. Just looking to see with these materials that are being recycled, what exactly
what they are turning
happens to them
into
after the process. And I'm just thinking if there's an opportunity that we might be able to use these recycled materials to help partially fund this project.
I believe that Switch Energy, when I asked that question, they said that they have end user who are actually processing. They only wash and shred the plastic, and then they sell it basically as their business model to other producers. So there is basically another company that's using this repurposed plastic for their materials, and it goes to many different places. So I don't have specific end product what they are making. But thank you for the question.
There's no other questions. Thank you, Simona. I appreciate your presentation, and
Thank you for your attention.
Keep in touch. Thanks. Our next presentation is David Warlow speaking on behalf of Bruce Trail Storage Project. David.
Thank you, honorable council members. I'm not sure if I can express what is going on with this particular project. It was brought to my attention that there are some concerns having to do with the loss of agricultural use with the property. My grandparents, my mother's parents, purchased what's now East Cliff Farms 80 years ago. My mother has lived on that property longer than any other person. My father married my mother in the mid-50s and he formed East Cliff and was a very successful farmer. In addition to producing milk, we also exported our breeding stock to Mexico, Cuba, United States, Italy. We also exported our hay from that property to the United States and to the UK. So that was very well and good for that particular period of time. However, all of that stuff didn't depend on the property. The property is a little over 100 acres. We, during the 70s, when I was out swathing and harvesting and all that, we had over 500 acres, not just within the immediate vicinity. We would go as far as the south side of Leith and the far side of Owen Sound. So 40 years ago, I was at a meeting that we were talking about the survival of the family farm. And I was very unpopular when I was speaking then, because I pointed out that the family farm was dying. It was on its way out. And unfortunately, if you take, well, I just drove from Owen Sound. If you take a look at all of the family farms that used to be, they don't exist. Okay. Farming has changed in the last 40 years. And our particular farm hasn't been an active farm since 1981. So my father retired in 1981. And he did some cropping. He had some pet beef that he would take care of. And those particular activities paid the taxes and repaired the fences. Okay. Subsequently, we've added some additional activities on the farm. For instance, the past few years, we've been partnered with a beekeeper who brings in his hives, and the bees, they populate that particular area. So they harvest for about 5 miles. Since 1989, the activity on that farm has been primarily computers. We used to sell computers until about 20 years ago, and then we devoted ourselves specifically with designing applications. So we have programmers in Australia, India. I used to go to Ukraine for half of the year. This was up until about 10 years ago when Ukraine and Russia decided to go to war together. But subsequently, we have continued to do so. A year ago, my father died. So he had a particular wish, and my mother shares that particular wish, that the property would retain its integrity for the foreseeable future. Like they're hoping that it'll be for the next 100 years. The problem with that particular goal is that of the grandchildren, so there's 5 grandchildren. My brother has 3, I have 2. My daughter's in Australia, my son's in Alberta. 2 of Robert's family are outside of the area, so there's only 1 left in the area. And she will not be a farmer. So we need to have a way of continuing the farm or the property, the land, for the foreseeable future. So one of the things about this property is, or this particular project, when this is all said and done, when it's being decommissioned, it will be returned to the current state. So the few acres that are being used for this particular project, they will be farmable again. As I said, over the past few years, it's been more of an apiculture operation more than an agriculture operation. So we've had bees and that sort of thing. So, by going with this particular project, we could replace all of the fields that are currently, doing soybeans and corn and wheat, and put them into flowers. So that would improve the apiculture production, and but also in conjunction with the revenue that we would gain from setting up these this project, we would be able to continue to pay the taxes. So I'm hoping that, well, my dream would be that the taxes would remain the same for our property for the next 50 years, but that's probably not going to happen. Or even the next 40 years. So I consider this would be a win-win-win for everyone that's involved in this. That's it.
Thank you. Are there questions from council? Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, David, for coming and speaking to us this afternoon. How many acres or hectares would this solar farm involve on the property?
Depending upon the future, how this would proceed, less than half of what the acreage. So a maximum of 60 acres.
Okay, so that's 60?
The maximum.
Yes, okay, so that's, and I'm only guessing, forgive me for this, but having drove by the property, and it's a beautiful property. I'm overwhelmed by the beauty of that property. I'm overwhelmed by the history of the Warlow farm. I was lucky enough last fall to go into the farmhouse and chat with Mrs. Warlow at election time, and that was an experience.
Yes.
60 acres, I would think, driving by would be about the size of what has been cultivated, is currently cultivated. Would I be correct in assuming that?
From the, so on Highway 6 and 10, there's land that's there. And then there's the barn. And then this direction east, that would be the area that would be under consideration. So there's roughly about 80 acres that are currently in production. The more important part is the woodlot, the bush, and there's acreage behind that you can't see from the road, but it isn't under cultivation. Yep.
Other questions? I have a couple of questions. Do you need to really proceed? Do you need Meaford to declare itself a willing host? Is that key to getting this project off the ground?
That will just get bogged into. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Yes, what we're requesting is the municipal support resolution. There's a form that the IESO provides where they would like to see the municipality approve it. It isn't a it would distinguish the project when it comes down to the analysis. So it's not always just based on the overall price that you provide to the government, but it's also the willingness and the participation of the municipality to join in.
I understand. So could I ask a question of our Development Services Director, Mr. Voigt? What does our official plan say about this property? Okay.
Your worship, off the top of my head, I don't know. But I can find out. We do have policies related to this kind of proposal in there. And that was, if I'm not mistaken, in fact, something that the mayor brought up when we were going through the official plan update. So, but I can find that out in short order.
Actually, when this first came to the table, it actually went to planning and our manager of planning had identified that these lands are in the Niagara Escarpment Development Control Area. So they don't fall under the official plan jurisdiction of the municipality. They fall under the Niagara Escarpment plan.
And is that something like the Canadian Training Center, which is, in Meaford, but we can't have any control over it?
We are a commenting agency as approval agency for matters within the Niagara Escarpment Development.
I think it's hard, hard for us, having approved conditionally the pump storage project in the billions of dollars that we, would stand, or not stand behind a really green energy thing. The only thing I can say about it is I understand the amount of energy produced in Ontario by solar farms is in the, like well under 10%, well under. So, but I just feel it's, we should be not standing in the way of progress here if, unless we have some kind of restriction on this land. If it is, we do have some lands where the soils are described as quite phenomenal, and we've got a microclimate, and so there is a class for that. But unless this farm is in that area where it is classed as, there is a name for the classification. If somebody would bail me out here, yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in order to do this, we'd have to have a notice of motion anyway. So I suspect it's probably not worth trying to answer all the questions right now or debate it. We've had the presentation. If somebody wants to bring forward a notice of motion later, then council will have a chance to have a debate at the next meeting.
Okay, good suggestion. I hope that is helpful, gentlemen. And then we have one final presentation. Tracy.
Can I just finish up? Yes. So thank you for listening to me. And earlier you had talked about the tangle or the tango. You haven't seen me dance. So. Okay, thanks.
Our next presenter is Tracy Smith, whom we know well, and welcome back to the podium to speak to our 2022 audit final report, which is detailed in item 8.2.
I'd like to thank the council for inviting me here this afternoon again. I want to also thank Val and Justin and Kathy and the finance team for all their assistance during the audit. I'm on, right? Okay. As the auditor, we have the responsibility to communicate with those charged with governance, which is you, council. The report in the council agenda contains all the required communication. It is very similar year to year, as the standards do prescribe what is to be included in there. So I'm just going to do a very brief summary of that required communication. And then I'll provide a high-level overview of the draft financial statements for 2022. They are included in Appendix A of the report. If you have any questions, please feel free to stop and ask as we go through the presentation. On the next page is the executive summary. Am I doing the clicking or are you doing the clicking? I'm doing the clicking. Oh, good. Help me. Okay. Oops, sorry. Do I have to point it somewhere? Oh. There we go. Okay. We have the executive summaries on page 3. The financial statements are presented in draft. They need approval of council before we can release our final report. Once we have approval from council, then we do have to subsequent event work up to the date of the approval. And we also have to obtain a signed representation letter from the management confirming their reporting to us. We are required to communicate with you on an annual basis that BDO is independent of the municipality and we can give an independent opinion on the financial statements. Materiality is $800,000. On pages 4 and 5 is a summary of the current audit process. On page 6, I think I'm on page 6 up there. I just want to highlight, this is a little different than the prior years. I want to highlight there are significant changes to the accounting standards for municipalities. So next year, the municipality will be subject to rules around recording asset retirement obligations. So those are liabilities that have a standard that requires the municipality to repair a capital asset. So things under this would be landfills, buildings with asbestos, gravel pits. So I'm mentioning it here today because I just want to make council aware that it is a significant standard and will take significant time from your municipal staff to incorporate that information into their financial statements for next year. On page 7, I want to highlight that there was some significant changes to the auditing standards. So that's what affects the audit from the audit side in 2022. So the standards completely changed for auditing, and we were required to basically redesign the whole entire audit process and bring in information systems specialists to look at the processes and the controls of the municipality. So on page 9, we're required to report to you if there is significant deficiencies in internal controls that we find during the audit. I'm happy to report that there was no deficiencies in internal controls that to report to you. On page 10 is the unadjusted differences. So these again were not material, so we can issue a clean audit report on the financial statements.
Did you like to answer a question at this point? Or?
Yeah, that concludes the communication part. So if there's any questions on the communication part, I'd be happy to answer those.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. So I was going to ask, do you want us to go as you go through it? But if this is the end of it, it's time. So on page 10, I have questions on, can you explain classification error, $209,000, and then harbor deposits? So we got less money than we thought, and then Meaford Hall, we got more money than we thought. Can you explain these three?
Yes. So again, the first one is simply an accounting standards, and it doesn't affect your surplus or bottom line. It's just a difference between where the it really relates to prepaid taxes. So you've had significant people that have given deposits on their taxes and their receivables, and so they're sitting in assets when really at any. Technically, it doesn't happen, but technically from accounting standpoint, they should be in liability. So it's just a classification between assets and liabilities, again, not affecting your bottom line. The other two are timing differences relating to when revenue is recognized for the harbor and also for Meaford Hall. When you get money in advance, then it should be deferred. And your current municipal staff is working on getting the numbers so that we can get that cleaned up in the next year. So again, it is just a timing difference between the years. Any other questions on the communication part?
Don't think so.
Okay, now we get to my favorite part is the numbers. In the appendix is the draft financial statements, and our audit report is on page 2 of that appendix. The management is responsible for preparing the financial statement. It's our responsibility as the auditor to give an opinion on those financial statements. It is an audit, so that's the highest level of assurance that we can provide to you as an auditor. And our opinion is in the second paragraph. In our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the municipality in accordance with public sector accounting standards. So basically, it's a clean opinion, and there weren't any concerns that came to our attention during the audit. On page 5 is the consolidated statement of statement of financial position, otherwise known as a balance sheet. It is at a point in time, so it was at December 31st of 2022. At December 31st of 2022, financial assets totaled $28 million. So that was an increase of $4 million over the prior year. Most of the assets are in cash and investments totaling $23.3 million. So there was an increase of almost $5 million in your cash and investments. And that's actually a result of a few different things. The receivables were higher. The receivables were higher in the prior year, so they're lower now at December 31st of 2022. So that means you've collected more cash at 2022. The payables are higher at December of 2022. So it means that you had cash at that point in time, which you were going to pay out as normal timing of your capital projects after the year end. You increased your external debt by $2.2 million. So you've now that money has come back into the municipality where you paid those costs for those capital projects. They were in unfinanced last year, so you had paid the cash for those in the previous year. And also you did put $1.3 million into reserve. So the increase in cash is really a combination of 4 different things. The liabilities totaled $21.5 million. As I said before, the accounts payable are higher. So that's just simply a timing of when the payments are made out for your capital projects and normal vendor payments. I want to highlight the deferred revenue. The deferred revenue was $7.1 million, and that makes up, that deferred revenue includes your unspent gas tax, unspent grants, also the development charges and your recreation land. So it's really it's not really a liability. It shows as deferred revenue until you spend the money. Then once you spend the money, then it comes into income. And lastly, just again, I want to highlight for the long-term liabilities, you did have new debt of $2.9 million for the library in the Thompson Street to finance those. But you also repaid almost $700,000 in principal during the year. That brings us down to the net financial assets. So that's your assets, your less your liabilities, and it is a key financial indicator. It's positive and it has increased even though you did take on some new debt. So positive it indicates a strong financial position. The tangible capital assets were almost $100 million, so 99.566 million. Again, want to note that that's at cost, less amortization, so that's not at replacement cost. And that brings us down to the accumulated surplus of $106 million. So that's the equity the municipality is built up over time, both physical and monetary assets. Details are in note 9, and they include that the reserves and reserve funds are 20.8 million. The general surplus for 2022 was 915,723. And it also includes going the other way, $4.4 million in unfinanced capital for other capital projects that you still need to finance in 2023. Any questions on the balance sheet before I move to the statement of operations?
Go ahead, Deputy.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And if we can go back to page 6 of the consolidated statement of operations and accumulated surplus, I'm just curious, and probably a question more so for staff at this point. Revenue taxation. We collected less in 2022 than we did in 2021. So I'm just curious with the growth in the municipality, why we're collecting less tax.
I can answer that, and Val can expand if I don't answer enough for you. But in the prior year, that included collection of prior year payment and lieu for the Meaford base. So that was a one-time collection of a number of years in the prior year.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. And on the same page that the deputy mayor was talking about, so
page it.
Page 6 of the report we're working on. The taxation is 150K more than budgeted. Is that newfound money, or have we used that in our budget from last year?
That'll be the supplementals and that'll be the supplementals that we received over the year. That's that $282,000 usually that we consider growth. So we've included that in our budget.
All right, I'll maybe just summarize this, the page 6, the statement of operations. So as you've noticed, it is your revenues and your expenses. The revenues totaled 30.7. The revenues do include both operating and capital expenses or capital revenue. The expenses, however, only include your operating expenses and amortization, which is the use of the capital assets over time. It doesn't actually include the capital assets that you budgeted for and paid for. So when you look at the budget column, it says 21.4 million as your budgeted expenses. Your actual expenses were 25.2. That's not because you've overspent. That's because you're not required to budget for amortization. And if you took the amortization out of those numbers, it would be 20.85. So you're actually underspent on your expenses. So again, this is the financial statements are meant to be a high level overview in accordance with public sector accounting standards. So when you're monitoring those expenses, you would be monitoring those through your regular reports from your finance team. I do also want to point out on this page the annual surplus. So the annual surplus is $5.44 million. And it's important to note, again, that's not your operating surplus. The operating surplus for the year was 915,723. And you can find that in notes 9 and in notes 11. So that's your budgeted operating surplus. The 5.4 annual surplus on this page is under public sector accounting standards. And what it's meant to do is to take a long-term view to see how the municipality is dealing with budgeting for long-term capital projects. And so it should always be positive, and it should always be a fairly large number, because from that annual surplus, then you still have to pay for your capital purchases, and you also have to pay for your debt payments from that annual surplus. So that 5.4 should always be positive, and it should always be a big number, and it's not your operating surplus. So any other questions on that page?
Oh, Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, Tracy. Again, on page 6, I was wondering about the taxation, and thanks for explaining that. I found the next line, fees and user charges, interesting too. They are about 100,000 more than we thought they might be, but they're almost 800,000 more than last year. And I hope that, to me, that indicates that people are paying for the services that they're getting from the municipality, and that's not coming out of taxes. That's coming out of the services they're demanding and wanting from us. So I think that's an important number too. I'm glad it's increasing.
The other reason that you see a big increase from in 2022 is I know it seems like forever ago, but 2021 we were still in the heart of COVID, and so a lot of your recreation programs and museum programs and the Meaford Hall they weren't running at full capacity in 2021, and that's why you also see an increase there.
Councillor Yurick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Tracy, for the information. Very valuable. Just the transportation services, obviously a fair discrepancy between budget and actual. So I'm just curious.
So that's the amortization, because the largest amortization number you have is with your infrastructure and your equipment. So a better comparison is to look at the first and third column, because that's a better comparison is to look at the second and third column, because that's over year, and it includes the amortization in both years.
No further questions?
I'll get through all the pages yet.
Sure.
Do you have a question, Deputy Mayor?
No.
No?
Sorry.
Okay, sorry. So we're almost through here. And so page 7 is the statement of changes in net financial assets. So this is where we take that annual surplus that was on the prior page, the 5.4, and we adjust for the capital assets and the amortization. So you'll see that the amortization was 4.6, and that's why there was a big difference between the budget column and actual column. And that brings us down to the increase or decrease in your net financial assets. So this is the this is the change in the net assets on your balance sheet. So it was an increase, and it increases when you put money into reserves, and when you have an operating surplus, then you have an increase in your financial assets. The budget number is negative, and it is negative because that you had budgeted to bring money out of reserves. So positive or negative is neither good or bad. It just depends on your budgeting, and you didn't use the money out of reserves because you didn't use all your capital projects didn't go forward. So you didn't need to take as much money out of your reserves as you had budgeted for. And then finally, the last statement is the statement of cash flows. So this is what happens in the actual cash that's in your actual physical bank account. So they're not including the investments. So about the middle of the page, $10.9 million of cash came in from operations. You paid out $8.8 million for capital projects. You put $3.2 million into your investments, and you received $2.9 million in new debt and repaid almost $700,000 in old debt. So there was a net increase in your cash of $1.1 million. So overall, the municipality is in a strong financial position. You have reserves of $20.7 million. Your net financial asset position has increased to 6.5. So it's a positive indicator. And you do have $4.4 million in unfinanced capital. So the municipality just needs to ensure that you have adequate funds to finance those and to cover your existing debt, but otherwise in a strong financial position. And that's a summary of a high level overview of the numbers.
Any further questions for Tracy? Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Tracy. It is nice to be in a position this afternoon where your comments are absolutely backed up by the numbers that we are in a strong financial position. What's going to happen to us, Tracy, with the numbers if we have to start doing a very large capital project and we have to finance a really heavy bill? We won't be a positive number like this because our debt financing will be quite heavy. So what does that do to a municipality when the province likes to see a municipality be very positive? So when we ask for things from the province say, you guys know how to look after your money. And if you have a big project and you go asking, they're going to say you're not doing so good. So how do we balance that as a council when we're faced with a very large capital project?
Yeah.
Not just 5-6 million, real heavy.
Yeah. So again, that's part of your long-term capital planning. So the province is asking for more information on your 10-year plan and your asset management plans, and that's they're moving to evaluate your municipality based on how you're planning on a long-term basis. There's also requirements for your debt limit, and your debt limit right now is well below what the municipality considers acceptable. So if you do have a significant capital project that's going to involve a significant amount of debt, then as long as you're able to show the province that you're well within your debt limits, then you should not be looked unfavorably. There are municipalities that have a negative net debt on their balance sheet, and again, sometimes that's life and how we have to get the things that are our priority. Lots of us have mortgages on our homes, and we have a net debt position, and we're not looked at unfavorably. So again, from the council's point of view, you need to make sure that you do have that long-term capital plan and that you have enough operating capacity in your annual budgets to finance the debt, the principal and the interest on that debt.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner, and thank you, Councillor Bell. I want to take a stab at this also and tell me if I'm way out in left field. Basically, Tony was saying, let's say we had to borrow $20 million to do a major project that puts us in a bad position, but our assets go up $20 million, so it doesn't change our positive negative, because the assets go up, the debt goes up, so you're still equal. Am I close?
Yeah, it changes your monetary position, but not your overall position. So you still have you'll still be the same. Your accumulate surplus as your bottom line, but it does give you less room to do spontaneous capital projects. You do have to plan a whole lot more because you don't have that room to do it.
Any other questions for Tracy? Seeing none, thank you very much for, a good report.
Thank you for having me.
I don't believe we have any deputations today. And are there any public questions for council? None that we're aware of. Okay. Any council inquiries today? And I don't see any of that either. So we're moving into our consent agenda, and items in this list have been before committee of the whole for discussion, and council may choose to pass these items and or bylaws with one motion, And a member may also request an item or items be pulled for separate consideration. And I'm just for the benefit of our listeners and viewers going to give you the items in the consent agenda. A is bylaw 2023-47, the Intertownship Fire Department Agreement. B is bylaw 2023-48, removal of the H4 symbol from 557-552, the fourth concession south. And C is finance 2023-21, award of tender for downtown inflow remediation. What's your pleasure with these three items? Can we take them all together? Okay, that seems to be unanimous. Can I have a mover and seconder to put them on the table? Councillor Bartley and Councillor Forder. Any discussion? All in favor? And Wambo, they're passed. Items for consideration today. Item A is the audited financial statements, which we've just talked about. And the recommendation is that Council of the Municipality of Meaford receive the 2022 audited financial statements as prepared by BDO Canada LLP and presented on July 24th, 2023. Can I have a mover and seconder? Councillors Greenfield and Urig. Any discussion? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Item B is the H1 removal from 203 Cedar Avenue. The recommendation is be it resolved that bylaw 2023-49 being a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw number 60-2009 of the municipality of Meaford pertaining to lands known as 203 Cedar Avenue in the geographic township of St. Vincent be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Motion to put that on the floor, Councillor Forder and Deputy Mayor. Any discussion? All in favor? And that is carried. Item C is 2023-50, the H1 removal from 195 Fraser Street. The recommendation be it resolved that bylaw 2023-50 being a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw number 60-2009 of the municipality of Meaford pertaining to lands known as 195 Fraser Street in the geographic township of St. Vincent be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Councillors Bartley and Greenfield. Any discussion? All in favor? And that is carried. Item D is the recommendation is be it resolved that bylaw 2023-51 being a bylaw to restrict the weight of vehicles passing over certain bridges be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Bell and Councillor Urig. Any discussion? Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So reading through the report, this is sort of a housekeeping duty we've been repairing bridges for a while to remove the load limit. I think that it's great that our ratepayers throughout our municipality get to see that we pour a lot of money into the infrastructure. And this is what can happen when things get done, get repaired and put back in the way they should be. Housekeeping here, remove the weight restrictions. So I think this is a good deal.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have questions regard to Schedule A. Just curious to know what is the current state, as a few bridges there, but what are the current state of the bridges listed in Schedule A and how frequently are they inspected for their structural integrity?
Through your worship, we are required through the provincial government to do inspections every 2 years on our bridges, and that is where the load limits are identified through, and they get updated. We didn't have any updates to the actual load limits this time around, but that is the process to updating those.
Okay. Any other questions? You ready to vote? All in favor? And that is carried. Item E, Meaford Haven Red Line revision to subdivision 42T-2011-03. And I'd like to recognize that Dan Sinkler is with us today and his representative. The recommendation is that Council of the Municipality of Meaford support the Red Line revision to draft plan approval to the County of Grey, subject to the conditions contained in Schedule 1 of Report Development 2023-11, Meaford Haven Red Line Revision to Subdivision 42T-2011-03. Need a mover and seconder. Councillor Bartley, Deputy Mayor Keaveney. Who's next in terms of, is someone going to present on this or? Oh, I'm sorry, here's Denise.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I don't have anything to present, but if anybody on council had any questions, I am here to answer questions on the
Thank
report.
you. Certainly a lengthy and a detailed report. And it always amazes me how many hoops developers have to jump through to build in Meaford. And I'm sure it's the same everywhere. But anyway, do we have any questions or comments or Deputy Mayor?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I just wanted to say I'm very pleased to see this process moving forward. And I don't know if you would permit it or not, but I wondered when we have Mr. Sinclair in the room, if we might invite him to tell us just a little bit about his intentions here and what type of housing we might look for, if it's attainable. We're always curious about that. So I just wondered if that might be permitted.
Okay. So I'd like to invite you by all means to come up and tell us a bit about this is the development on the south side of Highway 26 at the western entrance to Meaford. The opposite is we tend to refer to Luncall and we refer to yours as Meaford Haven. So welcome.
Thank you. Our intent with our first phase is for townhomes. Most of the housing will be attached units between townhomes and apartment units. That answers your question.
Can you tell us a little bit about the scope of the total subdivision? How many units?
Again, within the first phase that we've applied for, we are looking at 55 units. Each block within the subdivision is a lotless block, so it will need to go through site plan and final unit numbers will be determined at that point.
When we talk about affordable housing, attainable housing, some of us, are told that these are two different things, but at different times they seem to merge. And what would you tell us about, what kind of housing would you describe it in terms of affordability?
In terms of affordability, our target is to be within what we consider an affordable price range. However, they won't have any official affordable or attainable designations.
Okay.
We're looking to do the housing as net zero housing. And with the attached units, we feel we can hit a price point that will be affordable within the community.
And just for the benefit of everyone, net zero housing is housing that
net zero housing is housing that produces as much or more energy than it consumes. It's primarily dealt with a significantly better building envelope than what's required in the building code, and achieved with solar panels on the roofs.
That I think is of great interest to people. So thank you. It's good. Deputy Mayor.
With your permission, Your Worship, I believe you mentioned apartments, so they would be rental units. Is that part of the first phase as well?
There will be a block within the first phase, but it will actually be more like a second phase of the first site plan. So we haven't applied for that yet, but there will be units in that site plan.
Councillor Urick.
As long as we're putting the cart way before the horse. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm always curious, Loon Call is going to have an impact. Haven's going to have an impact. Highway 26 and traffic plans obviously are going to be primary concerns here. And I just always wonder, is there kind of long-term planning here about roundabouts potential, or is this going to be just stoplights? That's a long way out there. And I know I'm way ahead of where we're supposed to be on these conversations, but I'm curious.
Through your worship, Councillor did kind of open it up for me to jump in here. So just quick reminder, this is a red line, like almost literally, I believe 2 lines being changed. All this stuff was approved a decade ago. And the questions you're asking of the applicant, other than their involvement with MTO, they can't possibly know the long-term planning and that would change. So that would be the kinds of questions that, you know, the director down the table here might know, and also very, very premature. And I might suggest that this item first be perhaps put to bed before that continues on with the discussions, because it's not applicable to what is before council right now. Thank you.
Through your worship, I will just say that we are working with the MTO and both developers to find a solution that will meet the requirements of MTO in this location.
Thank you. Are we ready to vote then? Oh, sorry, Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, very encouraged to see this. My question, and I just haven't seen this before in any document, so I assume it's a formality, but under the section it says requested by school board. It's where's my note here? Just curious why it says that accommodation at the school board is not guaranteed and students may be accommodated in either temporary facilities, including but not limited to accommodation in portable classrooms, etc. Do we know through our talks with the school board what the remaining capacity is at the school? Like, is that a reality? Families might be moving in there and may not be able to bring their kids to our local school?
Go ahead, Mr. Voigt.
Through your worship. So that's one of the conditions that was, again, left over from the last time this was addressed. We're right now, staff is working with the county to kind of streamline some of these comments, again, because the county is the approving authority on these. And so this is kind of the air quote standard kind of language that often goes in there that really should only be coming from the school board, and we shouldn't be the person passing the message between folks. So part of the streamlining will be that as best as I can do, we will not be seeing these kinds of comments anymore. We're going to kind of update and bring ourselves into contemporary practice and not try to save ourselves from everything that's everyone else's business. And no, we don't. That's up to them to know what they do their own planning.
Anyone else? Any, you ready to vote? All in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ron or Sinclair. The next item is the award for tender for the Bayshore Road rehabilitation, and the recommendation is that council approve the award of tender 2023-02 Bayshore Road rehabilitation to Harold Sutherland Construction for $980,745.58, including the municipality's non-refundable allocation of HST, and authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into the necessary agreement. I need a mover and seconder, Councillor Bell and Councillor Greenfield. Any discussion? Yeah, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and only a comment. I just want to take this opportunity to really thank Tori in particular for all the time that you've spent in working with the residents in this community to really, I know that you've really listened and appreciated their input into this. And I just think this is a real good example of working together to make sure that this is going to be a successful project. So thank you, Tori, for that.
Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to know, so what is the contingency plan if the work cannot be completed by late summer to fall this year? What happens in that sort of situation?
Through your worship, since this was under budget, we should have enough time to finish it. I don't see there being a problem, but similar as we do see on other projects, luckily not often, we would just make sure that the construction site is safe for the winter. Construction would stop, and then we would start construction again in the spring, most likely once half load limits were removed. In this case, unlike structure 15, obviously people would still need to access it, so we would have to get it into some type of condition that it would be acceptable for use in the winter. So we just have to work with a contractor.
Sorry, another one.
That's all.
Okay, all right, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kettner. And so obviously we've alleviated the issues with drainage from the park, and that was putting a hold on this a year ago.
Through your worship. So yes, we were able to do some engineering design with Burnside, who did the rest of it, to incorporate the drainage work from the park into the drainage on Bayshore Road. There is still additional engineering that needs to happen at some point on Market Lane and Queen Street that would further help in this area. But through this design, there is a couple of pieces on Market Lane and with an existing berm on private property that should help with the drainage in that area to this point with future work.
Okay, and so there was a lot of residents concerned about deep ditches being dug along this. Has that been alleviated, or is that what's going to happen? Big ditches along that road?
Through your worship, the design is fully the stormwater is being fully dealt with through ditches. So it's the same as we see on our other roads in the area with ditches. Some of them, especially in the more populated area, are smaller because that's kind of where they're starting to collect the water. But as you get further northeast, the ditches do get larger to accommodate the flows to the outlet where it crosses the road to the bay.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And a further question regarding the ditches. Just thinking of the lay of the land out there, will those ditches, when they are adjacent to residences, be grassed so as to maintain the integrity of the curb appeal of those particular homes?
Through your worship, we're using a combination of both sod and hydro seed with this project. There is a significant amount more that will be sodded, with less of it as we get further northeast, that we will be hydro seeding. Hydro seeding is also commonly used as the grass is able to grow relatively quickly in those locations as well.
And Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a few questions for Victoria. Just to follow up on the ditches. Am I looking at a ditch or a swale? To me, a swale is a much more shallow ditch. I'm assuming these are going to have some depth to them.
Yes. So the slope of the ditches as they were designed are a 3-to-1. So less like less than a 45-degree angle. So yes, they are ditches, but as identified as you're close to Market Lane, the ditches are smaller because we're just collecting the water in that area, but then all of that water goes northeast. So as it continues, the ditches do get larger, but they maintain that slope.
Thanks for that. If I may, Your Worship, the report mentions bollards and small paved shoulders. Now, unfortunately, the term bollard, I always think of Gates of Canton. I'm sure they're not that type of bollards. Can you tell us a little bit about the bollards and the small paved shoulders?
The flexible bollards will be used to help slow down traffic as a physical traffic calming measure. So they are not hard, like in place. I think the ones that you're referring to are like concrete bollards. These ones, if someone were to hit it, they knock over, like they are flexible, and they're used as traffic calming measures in locations like this in both rural and urban areas. And the intention is to kind of act as a narrowing of the roadway. They're placed on the paint line, so they're not actually narrowing it, but it does physically feel like, because you have to go through two different things. It helps slow down the traffic. I know that we looked at, and I'm not sure if we're intending to proceed with it, but we'll work with the contractor. Sometimes they have the speed limit identified on them, but we will make sure that there's the right signage regardless in the location.
If I may too, the painted lines on the well, they really make it clear where drivers should be and where pedestrians and bikers have a right to be. And I think that's pretty important. I actually posted a picture of a simulation of what this is going to look like on my Facebook page. So if you want to go take a look at that, you'll see exactly what it should look like. And the exciting thing to me about this project is that from the very beginning, local residents were very, very vocal about, first of all, their firsthand knowledge of the drainage issues, and secondly, their concerns about active transportation and speeding. And so we had a meeting, and you were good enough to come and help us and present to a delegation of Leith residents the final draft plans so that they could see exactly, and they poured over them for a good little while, and I think pronounced themselves satisfied that this is the best solution to the problems there. And so thank you again, Tori, for your help. And I think that Burnside did an excellent job for us in this connection. So yes.
Through your worship, sorry, I realized that I didn't answer the second part of Councillor Greenfield's question. The small paved shoulder. We are not reconstructing the road base in this location. It's just the road surface. And so we're going to work with the contractor to get as much road surface on the existing road base as possible. And so we are hoping that we can exceed the 6.5 meter standard that we have and add a little bit of extra asphalt so that that paved line will allow for some asphalt on the other side of it. So that there is a small area for active transportation. However, we're going to have to work within the constraints that we are in. There is a section from the county road to Market Lane that has curb. We have designed that section to have a 7-meter road width, and we're hoping to get that as much as we can throughout the project. So that's what will be included with that small shoulder, but we will have to work with the constraints that we have.
Okay, thanks for that. It sounds good. And again, I want to echo the mayor's comments. Thank you so much for your efforts to bring this all together.
Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question sort of ties in with Tori's answer from previous question. So I see that the contingency budget here has gone up a little bit. So in the document, there's mentioned, of course, that there may be an increase in road width and associated costs. And of course, those costs aren't defined just yet. I just want to make sure, are we confident that our contingency budget is sufficient to handle these increased costs should they arise?
Through your worship, based on the per unit costs that we have received, they should be sufficient. So staff does not see an issue with the contingency that's being recommended.
Ready to vote? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Would you like a brief break, or do you want to keep rolling? All right, keep going. Brief break. I'm getting conflicting.
It was saying a 5-minute recess, but it's in your hands, Mr. Mayor.
Well, it might be wise to just take a brief recess and come back in 5 minutes then to go into committee of the whole, if that works for people. I think we're ready to resume, and this time I need a motion to move into committee of the whole. It's moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Forder. And the first item here is community services, the recommendation being that committee of the whole receive report 2023-26, well-being annual update for information purposes. So am I in the wrong spot here?
I think that got taken off the agenda and perhaps we didn't tell you quick enough. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. I've got it right here if you want to see it. So that's gone. Okay.
There was going to be a well-being status update at this meeting, but we had to take it off at the last minute, and so it'll be on the next one.
So moving right along, engineering services, item B, and the recommendation is that committee of the whole recommend council of the municipality of Meaford direct staff to move forward with option 2, request arbitration. This is regarding structures 21 and 22. So we need a motion to move into, or at least to get it on the table. Councillors Bartley and Forder. And who would like to speak to this? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. 2 weeks ago, I deferred this so that I could have a meeting with the opponents and the people that live down there. I had that meeting and it's as plain as day that these bridges need to be put back in. Farmers, the amount of farmers that showed up that would use these bridges, the amount of milk truck drivers, feed truck drivers that would like these open. So that part of my deferral, I've solved that with me. Now, at the same time, the mayor of Chatsworth was there and he told me about how they had the same dilemma with a bridge on the western side of their municipality, and where they met some different contractors at Good Roads and whatnot. So they put it out to tender and they got a very, very favorable price on bridges that would make these a viable bridges to reopen. So I know where I want to go with these bridges, and I thank you for letting me put this aside for 2 weeks, gain the knowledge I need to know. I'll just leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Keaveney.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And Councillor Bartley, I want to start by saying I appreciate that you suggested that we defer this. I think that was important. The knowledge that we've gained this past couple of weeks has really been quite pertinent to our thinking. I wanted to suggest that thinking of the article in the Meaford Independent that the editor suggests council's between a rock and a hard place on this one. We most certainly are and have been for 7 years. This is just an incredible length of time that these good residents of Meaford and some on the Chatsworth side of the deviation line have had to contend with not having these bridges open and dealing with a lengthy detour that is not ideal. So I really think it is time that this council put this behind us and that we take some positive action here today. You referenced speaking with Councillor Mackey because that's who he is at County Council, with Mayor Mackey from Chatsworth, and I've had several conversations with Scott as well in this regard, and understand his confidence and his council's and staff's confidence in going forward with the solution that they have chosen for their bridge over Snake Creek. And if I go back to May, when I was privileged enough to attend FCM, and in the trade show, I know I spoke with the particular manufacturer of those bridges, along with many other people at the trade show, as I always do. I'm always out there looking to talk to bridge people. And I know in talking with a few of them, and I always have pictures on my phone of these bridges and talk about the situation and kind of ask folks just for a very off-cuff indication of what they think. And you know, they generally indicate that they feel they can provide an affordable solution for these bridges. So I think it would behoove this council to follow the lead of Chatsworth and to go forward. And in order to do that, I'm going to make the motion that we adopt option number 4 here in this report, which is to go forward constructing these bridges, taking full responsibility of them here in the municipality of Meaford. I think that is the right thing for us to do. I think it is the most expeditious move that we can make to go forward to get these bridges constructed. And I think that would certainly be inclusive of also going forward with a tender process to work within a design build process that would be inclusive of an EA, so that we can see what might be out there in terms of solutions, and come forward and get these bridges open for these good people who have been so patient with us. Thank you.
Other comments, Councillor Bell? So you're seconding her motion? Okay. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to chat because obviously members of council have spoken with the Mayor of Chatsworth. I went to see the CEO of Chatsworth on a similar thing last week. And so just wanted to make a couple of comments. The first is that when I said that folks from this table had chats with folks at the Chatsworth Council table about the particular bridge that they have for what they call Structure 32, her immediate reaction was, I don't think that'll work in that location. Now, she's about as much of an engineer as I am. So, you know, we take that as it is, but that was the first thing they said. The other bit that I would want to just caution council about on this one is that I'm looking at their report from June 7th, when this was awarded to Northern Matten Bridge, who are the company that they're using for something that's called a 9M Lessered Modular Municipal Bridge. It's a 9.2 meter times 6.2 meter bridge. But the important bit is it says it's a probable cost of $238,881. It's an estimate and not an official quote. So they actually awarded that without a full price. So it could be something different. The other part is that we don't know, we can't guarantee that a price will be cheaper at the stage or when we actually do tender something. So all good. If council wants to move forward with doing this, great. But just be aware that that doesn't automatically mean it's a price of 400,000 as opposed to 1.3 million or 2 million or so on, because we do have to go through that EA process, and what they come back will give us some guidance on what the design will look like, and then companies will tender at whatever price they want to tender at.
Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. Now, were you referring to the June report from the Chatsworth?
It was.
So in July 5th, they come out with a proper tender price.
I will go and grab that one now.
So that price stood, and I'm not saying these bridges are the end all to be all. They may not be good for any other area in the Meaford, but I'm willing to put this to the test to see whether this will work, because the price is unbelievable. And maybe if it works, it could go for the one that we're wanting to put over a river that's for one farmer. I think it's time for us to test the waters here.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just quickly going to add, I couldn't agree more. And recognizing again and talking with Mayor Mackey, I mean, this bridge has a 75-year lifespan. So that I know was a point that was brought up in our last meeting, you know, comparatively in terms of maintenance dollars. If you were looking at, you know, a 40-year example is in comparison to 100, but 75 years for that kind of cost. And I do know that cost is inclusive of the EA that is required for Chatsworth. So it just seems like this is the ideal opportunity to go forward with the pilot project, like just as we did on Storybook Park Road when we weren't sure about resurfacing that road, and we took the chance and we used that recycled asphalt, and you know, that you can't compare that to this, but I think the whole idea of sometimes just stepping out of the box and just giving this a chance is something we should strongly consider.
The other thing I should add, Mr. Mayor, just again, so everybody's really clear about this, is that this quote was for a single lane bridge. And I know that on this side of the table, we have concerns about a single lane bridge, but again, I
It's a
understand
single
there's
lane
different
road.
opinions on that.
It's a single lane road. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. And I should have added, it is a single lane road. Every farmer there said a single lane bridge will do them. I understand where Director Tory was coming from on the future of large equipment. We don't believe that's going to happen down the deviation road in Meaford. And so a single lane bridge with extenders on it to give you 16 feet would be quite adequate.
Tori, you wanted to make a comment?
Through your worship, I could be incorrect, but this is not a single lane road. It might feel narrow, but it has traffic in both directions. It is a 2-lane road.
Okay.
Just for the
Okay.
knowledge, it's not the road itself.
Yeah.
If it was a single lane road, it would be a one-way. You can't have traffic going both directions. So this is a 2-lane road, so we could accommodate a 2-lane bridge. There would be needed to be changes to the approaches to accommodate that additional width. So obviously extra costs. I just also, as I know I've noted previously, we should be looking long-term, especially if we're putting in an asset that lasts 75 years, just to be cognizant, and we can provide more information as well outside of this conversation around the width that is needed. The existing bridge, when it was still being used, the guide rails got knocked off of it because of the farm equipment going across, because it is not wide enough to accommodate it. So just there are potentials to do different things, but the existing bridge width was not sufficient for the farm equipment going across it before it was closed. And so we just would need to be careful to ensure that we're not investing money into something that doesn't serve the population, because we want to make sure that we are providing enough width for the equipment that needs to access that road.
Thank you, Tori. Mr. Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I've got a couple of questions. One for Mr. Smith. I think we have a motion on the floor to support the agenda. I'm wondering if I'm assuming the deputy mayor is making an amendment to that motion. But if not, I think we should deal with the original motion, and if it's defeated, then we should go on to something else. The other thing is, I've never, I have a friend here, never really been sure if in today's world, building a single lane bridge is legal or possible. And so I got those two questions answered. The other thing I would like to say is I would be very hesitant to say that the railings along that bridge were knocked off by farmers and farm machinery. I'd be very hesitant to say that. So can you help me out, Mr. Smith?
I certainly can. Yes, the motion that the deputy mayor has made is an amendment. It is to, as far as I'm interpreting this anyway, to change the motion that's currently on the floor to replace option 2, request arbitration, with option 4, which title is conduct EA and construct new bridge fully funded by Meaford.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when it says to conduct an EA funded by the municipality of Meaford, the deputy mayor, the bridge builder, was going to do his own EA inside that. Is that not clear, Deputy Mayor?
If I may, Your Worship, to respond to Councillor Bell, I'm suggesting the amendment be to go forward with a tender. That would be for a design build process inclusive of an EA, all within one package.
Thank you. And so that is not exactly what the clerk has just said.
No, it's not, because I misunderstood. So thank you, Councillor Bell. So then,
We need to amend that, Mr. Clerk.
yes, we do. So the amendment then, I believe, is to amend the motion by removing the words option 2, request arbitration, with a design build tender inclusive of an environmental assessment.
And I would.
Fully paid for by the municipality, I think is still part of that sentence.
Okay.
So
I
you
can support that.
Yep, so you continue be seconding it. Is there more discussion on this amendment? Are you ready to vote?
Just one from me, if you wouldn't mind, McKenna. What am I trying to say? If you move ahead with this, then you are saying basically for good that these bridges are the municipality of Meaford's responsibility and the township of Chatsworth has no role in it whatsoever. It's still our belief that it is a boundary road. We can do that. We'll have to redo the boundary road agreement to specifically exclude these bridges from the boundary road, or to at least identify that these are 100% the responsibility of Meaford. But moving ahead under the motion that I believe is on the table right now would say, Township of Chatsworth, thanks, but whatever, you're nothing to do with us with these bridges, and we'll just do everything. And that would continue into the future. It wouldn't change when we next need them to be redone.
So do we want to add a clause that might enable us to invite Chatsworth to participate in future if they were so inclined?
So I have one suggestion that came to me at about 5 a.m. this morning. We could, if we wanted to, ask Chatsworth to provide us with an upset limit. So I'm under the impression from my conversations with both members of this council and staff at Chatsworth that their council is interested up to a certain financial value. And I've heard various numbers floated around, so I won't sort of specify that right now. But what we could say is that we want to move ahead with a design build inclusive of an EA and request that Chatsworth provide us with an upset limit, and then they will either pay for half or the upset limit, whichever is lower. That would maintain at least their ownership stake in the bridges, but we would then be acknowledging that if it's more than twice their upset limit, then the municipality would pay for the remainder.
I think that I see the mover and seconder in agreement with that. Do you want to comment?
Just a comment. I do like what you've brought up, Matt. In council motions later on in the agenda, I was going to bring up that I wanted to seek our own legal opinion on ownership of this road and or any other boundary road. I don't want to muddy the waters for us going forward, but in tandem with what we're going to ask Chatsworth to do, I would just like to seek our own legal opinion, and that would come up in councillor motions. But is that going to muddy our waters here?
I think it would muddy the waters. I also think on anything other than this particular thing, it's unnecessary. The municipality is pretty specific on how boundary roads are defined, and we know where the boundaries are and we know what roads are on them. And I think the other thing is we don't have any questions with anybody about them. Chatsworth haven't disagreed at all that this is a boundary road. I am understanding that may be one of the things the county is questioning, but if the county's not involved in this at all, then we and Chatsworth are the only partners. And if we both agree it's a boundary road, then it's a boundary road. But all of the others, even where there are minor deviations, all of the municipalities involved have for long-standing agreements saying that they are boundary roads. So I don't think we need legal opinion on those. We could certainly ask for it on this particular deviation, but we're almost trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Unless Chatsworth come back at us and say, we don't think it's boundary road, but they do.
So, and you want to make a comment, Councillor Bell?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Tori, I like how there is the absolute definition of road travel. So on my side road,
I have a 2-lane road according to what you've just said, because I meet my neighbors coming the other way. And yet both of our wheels are basically touching the grass on either side. In my mind, I would say that's almost like a one-way. I hope I don't meet somebody because it's just narrow. So I can understand from your engineering background what those definitive things are. And if you have said this afternoon, it is not a one-lane road because it's not direction in one way only, I can kind of get my head wrapped around that. However, I want to speak just a moment to my new fellow councillors. You're not so new anymore being on council. You've been on council for a bit. And I know that both of you two new councillors have both rolled up your sleeves and you've got involved in this, and rightly so. And for those of us that have returned to council with this issue that has been on and on and on, and it has been on our minds for so long, that this afternoon, when the deputy mayor, with her energy, has brought this forward, that we want to do something to get at it, to make it happen, and put this subject matter to bed. I am just asking both of you two new councillors, and I won't maybe look across at Councillor Greenfield for no apparent reason, that this is a subject that we've been dealing with, that we just simply need to get our hands on. And even with the comments from our clerk this afternoon, this is involved. This is complicated. This is got all the dynamics of something that being on council we're faced with. So this afternoon, my energy behind this is to make this thing happen and get it done. My final comment will be about the County of Grey. How disappointed I am of my Grey County fellow councillors who cannot see the value in an agricultural community to get behind this. It is a major driver in Grey County. And with you two, the mayor and deputy mayor, being there at Grey and hearing that and gaining no traction, I know that both of you are likely to put words in your mouths. You're likely disappointed in not finding traction at Grey County. And so if we can't get traction there with Deputy Mayor, what you've done this afternoon, that's why I want to stand behind you and behind any amendment and behind any good thinking that comes from our staff to move forward and to start seeing some definite positive results on bridges 21 and 22.
Amen. So do we, are we ready to hear the motion and vote? So thank you, Mr. Clerk, for
I'm frantically writing
we heard you,
here.
going away.
So I have got that the motion be amended by replacing the words direct staff to move forward with option 2, request arbitration, with 1, direct staff to move forward with a design build tender for the replacement of structures 21 and 22, inclusive of an environmental assessment. And 2, direct staff to request the Township of Chatsworth provide an upset limit for their contribution to this project. And 3, declare that the municipality of Meaford will pay for the value of construction above the township's upset limit should the total cost of the project be more than twice the township's upset limit.
Say the last part again.
I'm working on that. So the third one is that declare, so as in this council would be declare that the municipality of Meaford will pay for the value of construction above the township's upset limit should the total cost of the project be more than twice the township's upset limit. Basically, I'm trying to find words to say that we will pay everything that isn't covered by whatever the Township of Chatsworth will, but not that they'll have to pay 400,000 and we'll have to pay 150,000 if it happens to be 100 550. Because it's still got to be fair. I might tweak that language a little bit by the time we get it into the minutes, but basically it's saying that they will pay half or their upset limit, whichever is the appropriate figure based on a tender result.
Councillor Uric.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Tony, and we're painfully aware of those bridges and have definitely heard about them even before we were on council, and we know the pain points that past councils have dealt with us on, and I do fully support it because I think it's more than necessary, more than time. I'm buoyed actually by the fact that there's cooperation and communication between Chatsworth and Meaford. That's brilliant. Neighbors should be talking and working together. I'm also disappointed the Grey County doesn't kind of feel that way. My only question is still harkens back, I'll throw that to you, Tori, is about, and again, whether it becomes a 1-lane or 2-lane bridge down the road, but just what is the legality of 1-lane bridges in today's society? I'm just curious, is what exists in that parameter already?
Through your worship. So we do have and can have 1-lane bridges. There are very specific widths with regards to what is allowed for a 1-lane bridge. So they can span anywhere from 4 meters to 4.9 meters. That includes some shoulder and probably where the actual railing sits on the bridge as well. And then there are again minimum and maximum widths for a single lane or a double lane bridge as well. And so you have to have, I think it's at least 6 meter width for it to be considered, let me just confirm, a 2-lane bridge. And so we can design either. My apologies to an earlier comment. My understanding is that previously, and I was not here when the bridge was used previously because it's before my time, but that there were some difficulties with some pieces of equipment crossing it. However, we will look at what our options are as we normally do as staff and can present them to council. We just want to make sure that we're taking into consideration long-term uses of the bridge. We actually had a wonderful report from for another bridge that we're currently doing some design work for, where they actually gave us the widths of different pieces of farm equipment. So it appears depending on the farm equipment, there are different widths and depending on what is used in the area, it could vary as well. And so we can take all these things into consideration as we're looking at it. But the main thing is that a 1-lane bridge can only be so wide. Otherwise, it's dangerous because it appears to the users that it can be passed by 2 cars, but is not quite wide enough to do so. And so we just need to make sure that we are within those min and max values with regards to, depending on which way we go, either a 1-lane or a double-lane bridge.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks again. Thank you, Victoria. Just following up on that. We've been talking about widths. Is there a concern about load limits also? Or is a 1-lane bridge half of a 2-lane bridge for load limit?
Through your worship, the construction methods that we have dealt with, that I have been involved in, load limits are not a constraint. I don't know if other construction methods do have load limits in effect, depending on the construction methods being utilized. I wouldn't necessarily see that the width of bridge would restrict the load limit more or less because you have more material to deal with the tension and compression forces. So I don't think the width of the bridge would necessarily impact that, but the construction methods could potentially, depending on what we proceed with. But I'm not aware, especially if we're looking at what's being done in Chatsworth, if there are any restrictions with regards to that.
Are there any other questions or discussion before we call the vote on this? Seeing none, all in favor of the new motion? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you for your help.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that was the amendment. So now you've got to vote on that again because now it becomes the main motion.
Okay.
So in effect, the main motion is the same as what I just read out, but now has the words the committee of the whole recommend council of the municipality of Meaford appended onto the front.
So we vote again. All in favor? And the result is the same. Thank you.
That was helpful.
Moving on to memos, we have a variance report. Need a motion? Do we need a motion to put that on the floor? We don't. Okay. Are there any questions or discussion of that? Deputy Mayor?
Your worship, thank you. And I'm just frantically looking for the page anyway. I don't have it in front of me, but under Meaford Hall, ticket sales were down considerably. And I sort of thought we might not see that, you know, coming out of COVID. So I'm just, as I say, maybe staff can find it quicker than I can and speak to it, but I'm just curious why we think that is.
I think there's a few different reasons for this. I think there is still a bit of a COVID after effect. I think, unfortunately, our summer theatre, despite being so far pretty wonderful shows, has not quite got ticket prices. And if any of you read the New York Times, you might have seen an article this week about significant issues in the American theatre system, and that's very much true in Canada as well. Less people are attending the theatre for plays as opposed to music. And I think the other thing is that, of course, our numbers last year were swayed a little bit by the fact that some of the money that we've been received in 2019 and 2020 for shows that were meant to be in 2020 were then budgeted in 2022. So our revenues this year were a bit of a guess, because last year we basically had the money for our ticket sales for last year, because pretty much all of the shows were ones that had previously been scheduled during the COVID years. So this year we didn't have that, because we were basically starting again. And so we were sort of taking a bit of a stab at how much we thought we would get. And unfortunately, we're just not quite there. I know those of you who've been at Meaford Hall recently have seen quite a number of sold out shows. There have been some that unfortunately have been a bit less so, but have still been very, very good quality. We've still got quite a lot coming up in the rest of the year, so we're hopeful that will improve. But inevitably with Meaford Hall, if the ticket sales are down, that means some of our costs go down as well, because some of it is based on how much we pay to vendors or how many staff we need for various shows and things. So while it is a challenge, it's not disastrous at this moment, and hopefully it will improve.
Councillor Forder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just have some questions with regards to some of the project statuses here. So for example, museum foundation rehab, Blue Dolphin pool diving board replacement, they're listed as postponed and additional resources required. Is that monetary resources, or could we get some more information on what that's all about, please?
I don't have a good answer to that at the moment, and I can look into it more. I know we are planning to bring a report in early September to council to talk about capital projects, and there are going to be a couple that we won't be able to do because we need to have some additional resources budgeted next year, or for other delays for whatever reason. So we'll certainly have that in September as our plan, and if those are in that situation, we'll make sure those are included in that report.
I think this would be the second year that the diving board replacement would have been put off, I think.
I'm afraid I don't know anything about that project at this point in time, so I can't give you an answer.
Councillor Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. The harbor number, just curious, it's the minus 205,000 on budget. We budgeted minus 205,000.
The harbour budget is a little bit of a strange one because of the way, I think this is to do with the way that the revenues come in. We budget 0 because we want it to balance out at the end. So any profit in effect that we make during the year gets taken out in a year-end budget transfer and put into the reserves. So that budget of minus 205,000 is actually a revenue of 205,000. And then, so basically when we get to the end of the year, whatever that number is in red, that will just be transferred to the reserve and it will become 0. So it is on budget, whether we make a little bit more revenue or a little bit less revenue than we intended to make to transfer to reserves.
Councillor, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. And one final question. Fleet management, 10% over, and we know why that is because we had the report on the major repair required there. And so slightly off topic, and it's been requested from this council a couple of times, and Jessica's not here. But just does anyone have any sense in terms of the enterprise leasing, where we might be standing this year? Are we in good stead?
There is a report currently in draft format that I believe we're planning on September the 10th, 11th. So you'll have full details of the enterprise program, and that will also talk about the first cycle of replacement and some of the things that the enterprise is proposing as part of that.
You ready to vote? Right. Oh, no, we
No
don't
vote
have to.
required
Okay,
for this one.
just for information. Sorry. Okay. Moving on then to updates on things, and I'll ask our Deputy Mayor for a report on County Council if you have one.
I do, Your Worship. Thank you very much. It was a long agenda that we had last meeting. Council approved the acquisition of 2 small parcels of land necessary for the construction of the roundabout plan for the intersection of Gray Road 19 and Crosswinds Boulevard in the town of Blue Mountains. A lengthy discussion followed regarding increasing costs of the new Rockwood Terrace long-term care facility in Durham. Council had agreed to an upset target of $92 million after supporting a revised project scope, which removed the assisted living and village square components of the design, along with the reduction to the stormwater facility. The revised costing is now coming in at $96.7 million, recognizing ongoing increases in material costs. A 25-year debenture of $77.6 million at 4.75% will require an annual repayment of $4,330,318. Those are pretty big numbers. The province does provide annual redevelopment funding of $1 million, and we're hopeful to receive additional support from the province as this project moves forward towards implementation. The county operates with a debt capacity of 10% of own source revenue. This debenture for Rockwood Terrace would leave the county with the ability to borrow $42.3 million over the next 25 years, unless council agrees to increase that 10% limit. We are permitted to go as high as 25% of own source revenues, but this really got us all thinking. The upset to 96.7 million was approved in a recorded vote, which carried 74-22. The mayor and I did vote in favor. There was a presentation to County Council requesting the speed limit in Banks be lowered from 70 kilometers to 40 kilometers per hour. Speeding is a major issue, as we all know, across the county. After considerable deliberation, a motion was passed to request a report from staff identifying their recommendations for posted speeds in this area. The corporate financial update was presented by Treasurer Mary Lou Spicer. It revealed of the 209 projects underway in the county, just 16 of them are in a red category, meaning they are over budget or not meeting identified timelines. Pretty good, I think, in this day and age. Ian Duffy from McSweeney, who we all know well, shared his outline for our County of Gray strategic plan process. A media release was released that same afternoon for anyone interested in sharing their thoughts. And you can find that at www.gray.ca/strat-plan, or you can call 548-877-0730. Each member of County Council has been asked to prepare their top 2 priorities for presentation to council and staff on August the 29th. And I do intend to make one of mine around family physician recruitment. This, as we all know, is an issue that's impacting every part of the county. And we believe from an earlier meeting that I attended, as did our mayor and CAO, that in Grey and Bruce counties, the area served by Grey Bruce Health Services, there are 60,000 orphan patients, really incredible. The county is not engaged in physician recruitment before, but I do feel that it is something that should be considered. We heard from councillors Body and Matrosovs, who recently attended the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Basin Cities Alliance Conference in Chicago. The importance of protecting our Great Lakes was a focus, along with support for alternate terms of treatment rather than road salt for winter application, and an emphasis on the removal of invasive species along our waterways. Meaford has been invited to join this group, which I think we should. Report was presented by the planning department regarding the Union Center subdivision here in Meaford, which we have had under our discussion points here today. So that certainly was received favorably at the county level, and the county had no concerns at this time. So that was it for me, Your Worship, unless you wanted to add anything.
No, thank you very much. Any other boards or committees to report? Okay. I think we're ready for a motion to move out of committee of the whole. Councillor Bell and Councillor Urick at 3:37 p.m. Are there any, is there any notice of motion from anyone? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a notice of motion, which I would like to see staff directed to enter into negotiations with the city of Owen Sound for leaf and yard waste services for all our residents in Western Meaford.
Thank you for that. Do we need a seconder for no? Okay, you'll say no, that's right. Not until we get to the next meeting. Okay, but thank you. That's good. There are no motions for decision. We need to adopt the council meeting minutes for July 10th. And do we need to vote for that? Mover and seconder. Okay, it's moved by Councillor Greenfield, seconded by Councillor Forder. All in favor, and those minutes are adopted. Is there anything to be said about communications? With the minutes of the Bogner Hall board meeting, financial statement from Grace Harbor Conservation Authority, and items on the correspondent list. Anything that anyone wants to raise? Councillor Forder.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Through the correspondence list, I would like to discuss item number 5, which is regarding the pedestrian crosswalks. And of course, myself and many of our fellow residents believe that the current safety measures may not be adequate at this particular crosswalk. Over the last 2 weeks, I've spent quite a bit of time down there just watching and observing and speaking to residents who have been using that crosswalk. Nobody that I spoke to feels that that is safe. So instead, in addition to that, I did do a little bit of research, and I see that when there are overhead flashing lights on pedestrian crosswalks, driver compliance rates increased more than 100%. And that's a pretty substantial number. And I feel that it is our responsibility to ensure that our community's infrastructure not only meets the minimum safety requirements, but we should be striving to exceed those whenever possible. And I would also like to look at other municipalities who have done this with overhead lights for higher degrees of visibility. And we should be looking at those to seek and implement those measures that have a proven track record of success. So I just like to bring that up with my fellow councillors. I feel that this is something that definitely needs to be looked at. And I feel that this is an investment in community safety. And I would just like to get some support. I'd like to know what you guys think about this as well. But in my opinion, those lights off to the side are not adequate. I drive through there every day. I know those lights are there, and oftentimes I still can't see that. We do have those light poles that go over the road, and they have pedestrian crosswalk signs, just the white signs. I would like to explore the opportunity of getting some proper lighting that is over the direct line of sight of the motorists, so we can bring more attention to this community safety zone. So I'll leave it at that, but I open the floor to my fellow councillors to weigh in on that and see what they think.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Matt. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my fellow Councillor Porter should put forward a notice of motion on that to have staff investigate that, come back.
I think I will do that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that was going to kind of be my comment. I think we can do this two different ways depending on what it is that Councillor Ford would actually like to put forward, because I think I heard two different things there. If it's a request for us to look into safety standards and best practice in other municipalities and things like that, I think that's a notice of motion, and we can do that retroactively to 5 minutes ago and pretend you said it 5 minutes ago. If you believe that you want to give very clear direction right now to install overhead orange lights, then I think we can do that as a motion related to the correspondence list, because I think if that's what you, if we're going to be that specific, let's just be that specific and do it. Whichever way.
I would like to be that specific.
Go ahead, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kenner. I was also going to bring this up. I sat down there quite a bit of time. Not once did somebody use it, so I couldn't see the effect of it. But I know it's legal. I know it's been brought up to Ontario standards. I don't think it's adequate, and I support what you're doing. And I was going to consider the same thing. Thank you.
I think we're all in agreement. I spoke to this a couple of weeks ago, and I've seen in my own response driving, and we'll all go through that intersection numerous times a week, and you just do not see those lights that are over the sidewalk. Really, they're not over the road. I know that there was quite a discussion, and our transportation person had a lot to say the last time. Tori, go ahead if you want to speak to this.
Through your worship, I just wanted to get some clarification, or if you'd like us to look into different options and come back. So there are various options that include overhead lighting. Some include actual traffic lights, whereas other just have lights that come more like further out into the traffic itself. I know during the design of this, we were hoping to get the crosswalk to be narrower in that location and have it so that it wasn't the 2 lanes with the parking, but further in. But the transport trucks that go into the gas station there require that width to be able to actually get into the gas station. And so that's why it is that like 2 lanes on either side, and it is a bit further out. But depending on what council wants, like there are various options. So do you want us to explore different options and come back with pricing?
Yes, I would like to see a report with the different options, and then as a council, we can decide what we think is in the best interest of the municipality. Thank you.
I think that's then a notice of motion, because I think that's asking for investigation rather than just get something done. But that's okay. We can do it as a notice of motion.
You thought, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kenner. Respectfully, in the report, it shows actually stoplights like at an intersection. I don't think that's what we're going for. I think we're going for when the crosswalk button is pushed, or when they're going to use it, the lights that are hanging out flashing versus the expensive traffic lights and everything. I think we could go ahead with something like that and make it all work.
I think you will find the expense is basically the same, because most of the expense is getting power to those lights rather than necessarily the 3-color light being more complicated than the 1-color light.
Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I don't know if we're done with that, because I'm going to talk about a different
article.
No.
Well, let's finish this conversation. I'm inclined to think that what I don't understand how, when every crosswalk I've seen has the lights right over the traffic lane, in the middle of the traffic lane, I think, how we ended up with small lights that are, at the sidewalk, where drivers are not looking, you know, so I think that we should be able to get what I consider to be the bona fide real crosswalk, you know, lights. And I don't know how we ended up with what we got.
So we ended up with what we got because that's what our engineers designed for us, and it does meet the standards. And I have seen ones that are exactly the same.
Okay.
But if council wants to put the orange flashing overhead lights there, then let's be specific about somebody make a motion to that effect and let's just do it. But if you want to consider options and pricing and all that sort of stuff, then I think that's a different process. But if you just want to get it to happen, then let's just say that
I'd be really happy to vote for
the
that.
work we'll have to do the options is considerable.
So we have a mover. Do we have a seconder? A second, Councillor Bell. To make it happen, and this is with the orange flashing lights facing the traffic.
So I think that the motion then is the council of the municipality of Meaford directs staff to install overhead orange flashing lights at the Parker Street crossing?
Yep, correct.
My memory's going. The Parker Street crossing to be funded from the roads reserve.
Okay.
Might I add something to that? Again, this might be redundant, but maybe something that reflects meeting engineering standards, et cetera, right? Because we can't just, let's say, for example, that there's a different change that has to happen, that something else needs to be taken down. Like we can't make up our own lighting. So I just want to make sure that that maybe has to be stated. Just a question.
Okay. And Councillor Bartley?
And may we do that, or do we have to get the MTO involved because it's a highway?
Through your worship, it's in the connecting links. So it's in the connecting links. So we have the ability to do that work. So we can proceed with it.
If it was a brand new crossing, I think we talked to them, but just changing the lighting, I don't think we need to.
So could we hear the motion then?
The council of the municipality of Meaford directs staff to install overhead orange flashing lights at the Parker Street intersection and any additional work to comply with the municipality's engineering standards to be funded from the roads reserve.
Very good. Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. I totally understand the importance of this situation, and I have seen some relatively close calls there. Not that many, and I certainly haven't taken the time that Councillor Porter has taken to study the situation. I'm very reluctant to vote in favor of something that I have no dollar signs attached to it. You know, I understand we do have some reserve funding that would help out. So that's my only comment, but I just want to add it isn't all the light system. A lot of the problem there is the driving practices of some of our folks who use the highway there, and I don't. Doesn't matter how much money we spend on lights, there is another factor involved. Thank you.
Are we ready to vote? All in favor of the motion? Thank you very much. And thank you, staff, for helping us resolve that. At this time, I think we're going to go into a closed session. Oh, sorry, you had another point. I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had one. I also wanted to pull number 4 from the correspondence list. And again, Mr. Bell alluded earlier that, you know, we're new, we have our feet wet, but there's always something comes up that I could know less about. So the Owen Sound compost site question. Stop it. I'm just curious, was there a situation in the past where there was a relationship with Owen Sound? Because I see Georgian Bluffs has struck some agreement.
I can speak to that, to your worship. No, there was no formal arrangement. I think it was used because it was unmonitored before. However, with Owen Sound now monitoring and limiting, Georgian Bluff did not have any other facilities, so they entered into an agreement, and then the deputy mayor has made a motion to come forward the next for us to explore it, from what I understand.
So at this time, the recommendation is be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford does now go into a closed session at 3:51 PM with the CAO, Director of Development Services, and Clerk in attendance to discuss one, advice subject to client solicitor privilege, specifically requirements for a development application, and two, litigation or potential litigation, significant or specifically property standards and zoning matter. So we will report out of that meeting in due course, and this time we're signing off.
Move in a second or in a vote,
Okay,
please.
yes, moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Bartley. I think so.
Just a vote to agree to go into closed, please.
Pardon? Oh,
You've got to move in
okay.
a second. You need
Yes,
to vote.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just reporting out of our closed session this afternoon. We got direction from staff on a development matter, and we gave staff direction on an enforcement matter. And with that, I declare today's meeting adjourned.